They promised that digitalization would make life at sea much easier, but it only increased the workload.
Hi, imagine this. You are on the bridge. You are the second officer. You have just completed your watch. Now you have to go down to rest. But you are not resting. You need to fill up some digital checklist. You need to data enter into 5 different systems which are not talking to each other. And you need to take some photographs for the reports which are digitally sent to the office. Sounds familiar? You are not alone. There are 82% of seafarers who have complained about this. We digitized the paperwork. That means we converted the physical paper to the digital paper, but we forgot to reduce the work along the way. Today, I'm going to show you why that actually happened, what SIRE 2.0 really means to you, and what the industry is not telling you about the digital burden at sea. Let's dive in. The digital paradox is what we're talking today. What we were promised before the digital age, that once everything is digitized, your job will become 50%. You will have automated reports, you will have digital checklist, you will have smart systems, less paperwork, and the efficiency will grow manifold. But what we got instead, we need to monitor many screens at a time. We need to fill more data fields. There are softwares, but we have to fill in more data, the same data in different systems. More softwares, updates to learn, and more systems that don't integrate between each other. Researchers now have a term for this, technostress. The shoreside management talks about efficiency gains and digital transformation. But what seafarers are actually witnessing is the drowning in digital tasks and moving away from the seamanship, which they actually came on board for. That is the difference in the promise versus the reality what seafarers are facing. The question is not, is the digitization coming? It is already here. The question is whether it is actually reducing the job of the seafarer or it is increasing it. Let's next dig into what actually happened with SIRE 2.2 versus what people told will happen with SIRE 1.2. So what happens in SIRE 2.2? We have pre-submitted data which we need to give it to the oil major. The pre-inspection questionnaire, the human element vessel particular questionnaire, and photographs which are to be replenished or rather retaken every 6 months. This is what we submit before the inspection event takes place. Then what happens? There is a CVIQ developed. What is it? Computerized vessel inspection question. Previously it was VIQ. Now it is computerized VIQ. What it does? It actually specifies or rather customizes the questionnaire what the inspector will ask based on the data you have submitted. So every inspection is a customized inspection for the vessel and not a generic vessel inspection questionnaire that was previously followed. So next what happens? The 8-hour physical inspection with the tablet. So the inspector comes on board. His basic job is to confirm what he already knew from the data which we have submitted. He sees the systems, he interviews the crew, and he verifies the documents to ensure or rather confirm what the vessel had submitted before the inspection. Now, the biggest change in SIRE 2.0 is the human factors. Now, the inspector is not only checking whether the system and the equipment is operational, but he focuses on how the crew is performing, how they are communicating, how they are managing the rest hours, and how they are taking actions under pressure. And now it is no more an audit or an inspection, but it has become an assessment. He actually observes how the operation is being carried out rather than checking whether the equipments and the systems are operational. The SIRE 2.0 inspects people and process and not the equipment and the system as was done before. We should remember the SIRE 2.0 inspects the people, not just the people. What is the hidden cost what we are getting here? The digital fatigue is a very clear known fact now. It is based on research and not just anecdotal complaints from the seafarers. The 40% of time of the seafarer during his watch or the work hours is spent on updating reports, filling a lot of digital data, taking photographs for reports, and updating various systems so that the office can monitor the system better. The same time was earlier being used for proper navigation of the ship. Now, AI surveillance is affecting the mental health of seafarers. Now, every small task need to be documented and with proof. You need to have photographs with timestamps. You need to have the procedures. You need to have the signatures. You need to have checklist which needs to be complete. You need to be having the system entries, and you have report submission for each and every task. The task might take only 10 minutes, but the documentation around it may take more than that, maybe 15-20 minutes. What the constant documentation has resulted in the constant pressure on the seafarer. The seafarer is now focusing on the accurate documentation rather than completing the task accurately, so that the records are perfect for the office to review and ensure there are no observations on the entries which the seafarers made. The surveillance is always not remote, but what it does is actually converts into a documentation track. So basically, it doesn't actually monitor the performance of the task completed, but it monitors the performance of how good the forms were filled. So coming to the bottom line, the digital transformation, or rather the digitization of the work, is empowerment or burden to the seafarers. What it is presently doing is overburdening them with exhaustion rather than reducing their job load. When 82% of the crew complain that their workload has increased after the digitization, it is not the technology to be blamed. It is how the system is implemented is flawed. There is a critical difference here between the digital transformation and digitization of the process. What we are doing is digitization of the process. That means whatever had been doing in the paperwork, we have just converted into digital. But digital transformation is looking at the same process with a different perspective to find the actual process which is being happened and how it can reduce the workload of the seafarer, at the same time not reducing the efficiency or the accuracy of how the task was completed. What do you feel is the root cause? The seafarer input is missing from the design. The system maybe has been developed by ex-seafarers who are not actively sailing. They are sitting ashore for a long time. The governments, the office staff, they are not active sailing staff. The consultation should be done with active seafarers, giving them the opportunity, rather more opportunity, to pitch in on how the digitization is actually increasing their overload of jobs and not actually reducing them, thereby getting proper inputs for the proper development of the system. What we need to have is something called the human-centered digitization. But what we have now is the system-centered digitization. We don't want to change our traditional system, because the merchant navy is always has been a very traditional kind of industry. So we don't want to change our processes. We don't want to change our systems. So basically what we were doing in paper, we just want to transform it to the digital world. But what we need to actually do is keep the seafarers at the center and develop the digital infrastructure around them, making their life easy. My appeal to the vendors, the owners, the system developers, that you should not be thinking of what systems we can digitize, but rather ask how we can reduce the seafarers' burden on the tasks need to be completed by introducing more systems which will reduce their workload. We need to move the digitization from surveillance mode to the support mode of the seafarer. Presently, we are using the system to increase the surveillance of how the ship is operated. But we need to change it to a support-based infrastructure where the digital infrastructure supports the seafarer in doing their task better. What do you think? And what has the digitalization actually done to you and the jobs what you have been doing on the ship? Put it in your comments whether the digitization has actually helped you or overburdened you with more tasks on digital screens rather than papers. Thank you so much for watching this video. I will meet you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.